So director of sales
You are up, sir.
evolution at JB Sales, and what I'm doing over there is training SDR, BDRs, and AEs, full sales cycle sales reps, on top of the funnel prospecting in an innovative and creative way. And also, I'm the host of the SDR Chronicles, which documented my journey as a sales development rep. If you want to go check that out, so that's what I'm all
Awesome.
about, and excited to be here.
Fantastic. So I'm Tim Gosnell. I'm the CTO White Rabbit, um, host of the Emerge event. We apologize for any technical difficulties. We promise you it was not our software. However, we would just like to welcome everybody here and say glad to have you, and we hope for many more successful events in the future.
Yep, and my name is Rob Turley. I'm one of the co-founders of White Rabbit Intel as well, one of the hosts of this event. And yes, like Tim said, we don't build software like that, right? But yeah,
Right.
I'm also CDO and EVP of Partnerships and Strategy, and it's very exciting to be here. So
Great.
perfect.
All right.
So Morgan,
Well-
that's all you to start out with the.
Yeah, exactly.
What's up?
So
Are you all set? Do you have the outline? Yeah.
I do have outline. Yeah, I can pull it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the main questions there, you just those are the topics. So
Yeah, Rob and I can go on and on about the subject forever, so we figure having somebody to steer this conversation is probably better.
Yeah, no, I thought you were gonna.
Yeah,
ask the
right,
question,
right.
We were just gonna go into it. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
No worries. Yeah.
Boom. Well, anyway, let me begin with. I wanted to talk a little bit or tell a story. We often talk about what it's like to think about improving sales from a data point of view. And why is that necessary? What is the actual problem here? And one of the things that uh, I like to point out, I have a background in psychology, so I like to point out that when you're looking at anything in life, because you are from the time you're born till the time that to today, you have been ignoring information. Your brain has been culling out the things that you pay attention to. We refer to that as noise, right? And when you look at data, when you look at a massive spreadsheet of Excel and you see all this stuff and it doesn't really mean anything to you, and the more it gathers, the more your brain wants to ignore it. That's its kind of default state. So we see that this all the time. All these companies have all this data, all this stuff that they have been collecting over the years, sales records, things that went positively, things that went poorly. And you ask people, so what do you learn from that? And they're like, I don't know. And why don't they know? Because it's so overwhelming to them to actually sit down and look at what that data says. Most companies have that data, they just don't ever use it. So part of the idea here is to enable sales with hardcore data. Your assumptions, the way that you typically look at things when you are processing things in life, all comes from experiential data. If you're successful over here, you repeat that. But what we have found when we look at people's data, they don't actually know what's successful. They think that they get it, and so they work off this gut feeling that this is going to work. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. What we see when we look at sales cycles is what, 3% conversion rates? I feel like it could be a whole lot better.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, often
There went
what it is. They're just guessing. Oh yeah, these are the people I should be talking about. These are the people. Oh, am I now?
You're breaking up, buddy.
Yeah, you're going in and out.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, for sure. Yeah, let me try to get it.
I guess I can hop in there.
Yeah, hop in.
Yeah, for sure. So Tim, bring up a quick point on data, and more so, I think what everyone's on the call right now, I'm assuming everyone here is in sales. If you want to drop in what role you are, we can give you more contextualized here. Is proactive and reactive data. So what I mean by that is proactive data is, okay, I'm going to go find my contacts, right? I'm going to go find those insights. I'm going to go figure out what's the intent. of the people that I'm reaching out to. And then more so reactive data is what's coming in inbound, what's coming directly towards me. And so I think as sales reps, what we have to be thinking about is, okay, proactive data, how can I go figure out the people that I want to go talk to, right? So in that case, what that means is right now, if as you're leading a sales teams, things to be thinking about are, okay, what industries are we closing the most in, right? Which personas are leading us more towards that budget. And so when I think about the data, everyone sees it differently, right, in this conversation we're having. But the best way to think about it is, how can I proactively figure out what data we have, whether that's a spreadsheet that we have across with all our reps across the board? What type of phone numbers, how are we getting that data as well? And then also, what's the intent in terms of how do you want to reach out to them? In terms of reactive data, that's you all have people that are probably coming in inbound, and then why are those people coming in inbound? And then what you can do is, based on those problems that are happening inbound, right, collecting that data to then use that from a prospecting or a sales standpoint. So I think from Tim's point, it's people are like, yeah, we got data, right? But it's like, what does that data mean? How clean is that data? How efficient is that? Because I think a lot of times there's a lot of stuff that we have, but then we don't know how to actually take the steps to go execute on it.
Right. It's like, we have the numbers is what people think. Oh yeah, we know our numbers. We have our numbers. And they assume based on what they think the numbers are or what it means, and they haven't actually looked at the grand scheme of things and the huge, large format of everything and tying all the connections that are often missed. Where, I'll use an example of the rice trade in China is directly related to the plastic production in Canada. Why is that? Does that have anything to do with the software that you're selling in North Carolina, the software that you're selling in Florida? And yes, it absolutely does in a lot of cases. And being able to see those type of insights is very hard to do as a human being, or just in general, why sales enablement technology is changing the industry. That's why B2B is evolving, because these technologies to be able to do stuff like this is now becoming available. It's now going to be there, and it's power in your hands that once was never, we weren't capable of doing. So it's a whole nother way of looking at this, and these technologies are becoming cheaper. They're becoming more robust, and they're becoming available to even small and medium businesses, because before it was an elitist thing, really. I mean, of a team spend millions of dollars a year on this data processing and analytic, a team of scientists, team of software engineers, team of everybody, just to get it done.
Yeah. So when you think about it, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. You're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you look at what's, like the state of the industry, what's happening, how it's changing, we look at, how all these, there's a web of interconnected people out there. What is that web? Can you tell me what that web is? I don't think so. What most people can't. And the reason that I, kind of push on this point a little bit is this, and I mentioned this earlier in my first statement. We camouflage is effective for a reason, right? It's because it masks the creature, or it masks a human to look like its environment, and what you're looking for is the part that sticks out, and that's not a real obvious thing to your brain. Your brain is actually trained to work on noticing patterns, not noticing and ignoring things that look completely the same. So what we're talking about here, when we look at the state of the industry, is that's what's been going on. Everything that the opportunities are camouflaged in there, and you actually have to look more closely to uncover new.
And I think, Tim, also on top of that as well, when we're thinking about technology, we're talking about changing, that also comes into like AI, right? And when we think about how AI comes into play, now actually this is a question for everybody that's here. Like, how many of you guys are afraid of AI? Like, I saw like a robot do like a backflip on Twitter the other day, and I was like, "Yo, iRobot's coming way sooner than what I thought." So, if anyone's,
I love that question, Morgan.
No, but for real, like everybody in the chat is super curious to figure out, like, okay, like, are you afraid of AI? And if you're not, you can be like, "No, I'm not." But here's why I asked that question, is because a lot of people right now, Terminator's coming, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people right now are facing what John and I have been talking about for a while, which is the death of the average sales professional. And we believe that it was going to come, at some point due to AI technology, and those people would be replaced, right? Now, obviously, due to the current climate, people are getting let go, etc. So, because of that, when you think about AI, if you've done the right things in terms of your skill development, your career development, this is a great asset. So more so as sales professionals, and more as we move forward from that leadership perspective, and as we are guiding teams or whatever we're doing here, I think we all have to think about becoming more of Iron Man or Iron Woman in sales. So the
So
way,
Morgan, you got a
yeah,
good point there.
yeah, go ahead.
I wanna like add to, so people do fear AI, and one of my favorite hashtags that I use actually is AI the number 4 then good. So AI for good, because AI really
Yeah,
is, when it's created to enable companies, when it's created for B2B, it's not to actually hurt people, it's to help them. It's supposed to, what's meant for is to get rid of the menial tasks that you're doing every day. All of that wasted time that you're spending doing, and it could be from prospecting, it could be from market research, it could be from any perspective like that. There's a much faster way to do it, a much more effective way to do it, and there's a way to actually know what the answers are rather than just taking that wild guess every single time. For example, like I'll give a little
mm,
story of, we gave a demo to this one company, and I'm not trying to talk about a product or anything.
Well, you're cutting out, so you're not going to be
yeah,
able to.
yeah, exactly. They cut you off. They're like, Rob, you're done. You gotta stop. It's over for you.
Boom. And he's still going.
Still okay, Rob.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure which story he's going after there. He's got a lot of them, and they're fantastic.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, we
Yeah,
can't hear Rob at all. I guess.
yeah,
I
me
guess
either.
the woes of
The woes of the
technology.
internet. At
Yeah.
least it's not a Zoom bomb. We had that happen the other day. That was fantastic. All right, so I think where Rob was trying to go with that is we took a set of data that we processed back to a CEO of a company, and
Mm,
he, like, the guy started dropping f bombs about our insights, and it wasn't that our insights were amazing. It was simply like a mirror on their process, and he like, they didn't have titles in their data. They had just gaps. We could tell them who their most effective salespeople were, and by what margin, things like that. And what it did is it showed holes, like they weren't filling out their CRM correctly. Right? It showed that they weren't tracking their things the way they wanted to, and that where they thought their ROI was coming from was not where it was coming from, and that is the power. Like, to be able to process data in a way that says, hey, this thing that you're spending all this money on isn't actually producing the results that you hope for. That's really where the power lies. And so the point that I'm trying to make there is simply, still can't hear you, Rob. I'm sorry.
you still can't hear Rob.
It's simply, the power of it is not to replace your brain. It's not to do thinking for you. It's just to get the results more quickly.
Yeah, and then I know as Rob's tuning back up here, I want to add to that point. And 'cause someone asked this question, Ben here asked, "Hey, is there AI that can tell the strength of relationship data? Something better than LinkedIn First Degree? I know there's a tool called Nudge. You can go check that out, and they determine that relationship based on their AI platform. But if you all haven't heard of this tool, I highly encourage you to go check it out. It's called Crystal Knows, and it's a great AI tool that tells you the disc profile of the person that you're reaching out to. Or if you're from a sales perspective, right, you're getting on a closing call, you can figure out if this person likes being direct or things of that nature. Oh yeah, okay, no longer an option. So I would go for Crystal Knows. So Crystal Knows allows you to determine that relationship, and it tells you how you could reach out to that person. And so it's a disc profile. It's like, hey, you want to be direct with that person, or hey, they like factual information, or they're more visual. And so when you're prospecting, it's a lot easier to engage with someone knowing what their personality is. And then also as well, when you're going on those closing calls and things of that nature, it's a great way to determine how you want to have a conversation with that person. And so that's another way that you can think about, AI and how it helps us evolve. Is if you're already a good to great rep, you'll know how to leverage that information to prospect and to sell. And again, that's why I truly believe that AI is only here to help, just as Iron Man had his suit, just as he has Jarvis. It's the same way as a sales rep is doing the things that they need to be doing. Then just as Tim was just talking about that data that can tell you where to invest, not to invest, and also as well that it can help you as well. And so yeah, I can drop in the link right now for you, Jody, so you guys can go check out this tool.
Yeah. So the one thing one of the things I like to talk about in this particular space is my wife has this story. She talks a lot about humans telling themselves stories, right? And they're self-fulfilling stories. So what I mean by that is, if you go back to think about Native Americans, and like I live in Colorado, so it's kind of apropos to me, but they travel around the plains following a bison herd, and they don't necessarily follow the bison herd. They actually predicted year to year where the bison herd would be based upon the conditions on the plains, right? And so they'd go there, they'd set up camp a ways away from where the herd was going to be in order to go hunt it. And you can think of sales as hunting if you want to. I don't tend to, but I know a lot of people do. And they set up ahead of time. They don't scare off the bison. And here's the thing: that's a self-fulfilling story. They tell themselves the story about where the bison are going to be. They go there. They set up camp, they go hunting the bison, they're successful. Now, if one season the grass changes, things, COVID-19 happens, and all of a sudden the bison aren't in that place where they're supposed to be anymore, that self-fulfilling story doesn't happen anymore. The conditions have changed, but they're still telling them the story, and they still will probably go back next year, right? That story is that thing that we do in ourselves where we say, oh, this is the way it was, this is the way it's going to be. And that's not necessarily the way it always is. If your sales process gets you a sale, with a CEO over here and a VP of sales over there, and then there's this guy, the director of engineering at some other company, and how do these people connect? What's going on here? Are they related at all? And you can tell yourself a story, and you will tell yourself a story because your biology makes you tell stories. That's what humans are good at. We tell ourselves stories, we tell each other stories, that we do that story thing to predict where things are going to go, how things are going to happen. And those stories aren't always right. But we are so biased to our own stories, a lot of times we just assume we know. So what I'm getting at there is, if you actually take the data and look at the data, sometimes what's interesting is that CEO, that VP of engineering, that VP of sales and director of engineering, they're all actually very similar, but sometimes they're not. And when you start actually processing the data, you can develop personas for each one of them, and maybe the persona is the same, but you can actually get a better idea of each individual, and then you can start mapping those personas onto other people. So when we talk about sales enablement technology, that's the stuff that really gets me going.
Yeah, and again, make sure Rob trying to figure it out over there, trying to call IT support. We're gonna get Rob.
Maybe you should reconnect, Rob.
Yeah,
maybe reconnect.
Because I know he's trying to say something there. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, right, Tim? Is that you mentioned data being the enabler, and I think sometimes we, obviously from an enablement standpoint, everyone can attest to that's listening in, is that it's the skills, the development of the skills are incredibly important, and that's part of sales enablement's job. But also, it's to enable them on how to leverage data, on how to leverage those tools. And I feel like if you can leverage tools and the AI, which I feel like are two different things at the end of the day, then that will make you even more successful than most. Because if you're able to figure out how do I, like you said, shift the data to figure out how to talk to this persona and this industry, those reps are more successful because they know where to aim the target.
Yep.
Where you're taking a very concise sniper shot approach versus, hey, I'm just gonna spray and pray and see what happens, right? Which
yes. So, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Is this all set?
There he is.
Oh, thank God. Okay, here we go. I was going to add to that where it's like, yeah, being able to target people in a whole new way should be a highly available technology. It's really cool what you could do when you have all the data available, and when you can enhance that data with all the data that's on the internet, because there's so damn much of it. You can really do amazing things. You could see insights into people that you never thought could be something relevant to a sale. It's like, like you were saying, Morgan, and like you were saying, Tim, from before, with storytelling, that's ingrained inside of us. Like from being a child, we've been listening to stories, we've been tuning into that, and that's like super important to us to the core. But some people didn't really have a great experience as a child with storytelling, because they may have not heard it, they may have not liked it. And then there's different personalities of people as well, where they're more direct, they're more along the lines of they want to build a relationship, and getting people in touch with each other that are actually going to connect at a personal level is important, because people in B2B sales, especially, do not buy the product or service. There's no such thing as a product or service that sells itself. They're buying the salesperson. And that's one thing that ties into automation and AI, is that it's not to replace the jobs, because if you actually, oh God, will AI take my jobs? I think that's a website that you could go to, and you'll see the likeliness that they will. No, it's crazy. It's like for the next 20-year projection. And salespeople in B2B that do direct sales, absolutely, it's like a 1.25% chance that the job's going to get taken, because you cannot replace that personal experience.
Yeah.
You just can't replace it. It's all about that connection. And why not use technology to connect the salespeople you have, or connect the relationship builders that you have, and be able to know already right off the bat, like, hey, this person has the same interests as me. They like my type of style. They love chatting back and forth, or, oh, they like to be direct. They want one and done. They want a closer when they're talking to a salesperson, because all they want to do is talk about, they don't want to talk about anything. They just want to get it done. Like, what if there was a world that we can get people connected like that, to get rid of all that noise, to get rid of all that nonsense, and let the AI deal with the nonsense, let the technology deal with the nonsense and the noise, so that we can focus on what actually matters.
Yeah. So you bring up. So I heard this on a panel. It was 4 years ago, and I heard this quote, and I was like, "This is it," which is either the robots are going to be telling us what to do, or we're going to be telling the robots what to do. And that hit home me, because I was like, all right, like, either that basically means, right, if you don't skill up, you're not gonna be in a good spot, right? So I found that very intriguing when I was sitting there in the crowd, and the person on the panel said that, because we all have to think about, to your point, Rob, is how can you make sure that you're still telling that story? How can you create that emotional connection? People buy off emotions, and they back it by logic. And so we always have to be thinking about,
Yep.
how can you be that storyteller? It's the reason why they keep dropping Toy Stories. It's the reason why they'll keep making Fast and Furious, because people have had that emotional connection to that story, and they can continuously go on with that. And I think I don't foresee, right? We don't know. I don't foresee a robot coming in, right, and being able to create that emotional connection that we as sellers are here for, right?
You're 100% right there. There's no replacing that human factor. And I like that quote that you said. You heard for like 4 years ago. I wouldn't. It's funny, because on Tim and mine's and our perspective is that, we build technology like this. So it's kind of funny, where it's like they'll be telling us what to do, or we'll be telling it what to do. We build it to tell it what to do, to tell you what to do.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean, we say that, but here's the thing: the point that you make about either you're going to tell it what to do, or it's going to tell you what to do. Ours does both, right? You tell it what you want, and then it's going to tell you what to do, right? Because
yeah, it's
the
got
whole
yeah.
the whole point is to say, oh, I don't have time for this. It's too much data for me. My brain like wants to melt when I look at this. And who wants to be in that position? Like, you'll ignore it, right? That's people call that avoidance. Really, I would argue that your biology is trained through years and centuries of evolution to literally ignore that. Your brain says, I don't need that. If you
Yeah,
can't
yeah. To make that a little bit clearer, it's just like, imagine if you're looking at a tree and you were seeing every individual leaf as if you were staring at each leaf, versus just looking at a tree. You would lose your mind. That's why our brains develop to ignore noise, because how do you even do that, right?
Yeah.
So, that's the point. You tell the AI, I want to look for, or you tell the data processing, I want to look for patterns inside of this data. I can't see them. Maybe there is one there. I'll never find it. Boom. That's what we're trying to accomplish. right? So I think that's where the whole industry is trying to go. And I just feel like the more you look towards trying to figure that out, the more likely you're going to be riding the wave. You know, this is what's going on in the industry. So people are getting on this, or they're being left behind. And so tell the AI what you want it to do, so it can tell you what to do, right?
And then on top of that, Tim, to your point, is the goal is more active selling time.
Yep,
You know,
exactly.
I saw the post the other day. I don't remember the exact percentage, so I don't want to butcher it, but it was low of how much active selling time that a sales rep has, right? Due to managing admin tasks, managing to go getting data, et cetera, whatever that is, right? And so I think also what we have to be thinking about is how do we invest into those certain tools like you're talking about to make sure that you're putting yourself in the right spot to have more active selling time, do your calls, do your sales process, and getting the right data to get there as well. And I think from an enablement standpoint, right? The whole goal for an enabler is to help their sellers be more agile and give them more active selling time in their sales process. And so if you have that all in play, you're definitely in a good spot.
Morgan, I love that. That's literally what we believe in as a whole. Like that's like we're all about just ethical human connection and just not wasting as much time. Like what you like Morgan, I'm not sure if you know the real statistic, but it's somewhere around here. It's like 70% of a salesperson's time, if they're a full like, start to finish salesperson, if they're just like an opener or like, an SDR, it's a little bit different. But if you're a full spectrum salesperson, it's like 70% of your time is wasted prospecting, right? It's around that.
It's something absurd
Yeah,
like that. And then also
it's
quantifying
crazy.
prospecting, right? It's like, does that mean researching accounts and finding data?
Yep.
Does that mean actively making calls? Because if we should be actively making calls, right? We should be actively
Right.
doing those emails. I know Ryan obviously would attest to that. He's out there always dialing, but the whole thing is that, like, yeah, you want to do more prospecting, like real activities, more so what we'll call those the green slot, so money making activities. But those yellow
I like that.
activities is more so what you all are focused on, which is how do you create or find that intent data? How do you proactively get it? How are you reactively finding those insights? So where most reps, they struggle finding those insights, they struggle putting in now all those admin tasks, because now that's getting them away from the money making activities, which is going to help you hit quota. Because if your reps on your calendar, if they don't have those green slots, what we train on, what I have myself, if I don't have green slots on my calendar for the week, that means I'm not having qualification calls, I'm not closing anything, and I'm not scheduling meetings. And that's a huge red flag for
Exactly.
any rep right
I love how you say yeah. I can't even describe to you how I feel about sales quotas. It's awful. It's such a baby boomer, large corporate thing that it's like, oh yeah, you need to make 250 calls this week. But if you have 20 really valuable calls, that's going to take you all week to go through those calls. If they go on like that, or just 20 accounts, you can't deal with 250 accounts. If you actually have valuable conversations, you're only going to be able to have like 4 or 5 meetings a day. It's you can't get there. It's not possible. So if a salesperson is top notch, they're having these valuable calls all the time, they're finding the right people every time, they're going to miss that quota every time, and their job, depending on where you work, some places will fire you because you haven't done enough activity. Meanwhile, you're getting them more business than anyone else.
Crazy. It's crazy how that works.
Right? You could be the best closer that company has, but guess what? You're going to lose your job because you can't make enough calls a week.
That's what happens when you use your gut to say, this is who does the most for us, right? When all you do is tell yourself that the story, the thing that's going to happen the most is the number of contacts. That's what drives it. If that's your bottom line, that's not the whole story, right? And we all know that. But people lose sight of that in large corporations, especially because in large corporations, it's all about KPIs, and they like to put in KPIs that don't mean anything. And because it's easy to rank people on a BS KPI, right? That's not management. That's not leadership. That is bureaucracy. And bureaucracy, well, it doesn't actually get you anything innovative, or does it actually really do anything but keep the ship on the same path it's been on, right?
Truth.
It's why they talk about nimbleness in business for little businesses versus the big businesses. They are not nimble. Well, they're not nimble for a reason. They're actually built that way. The process is supposed to be repeatable. So
that's true.
when we're little, we can't be like that. right?
Well, also,
We
it's
actually,
also not a world of copy and paste either, where you know
exactly.
one person's process will not always work for another person's process, and everybody's process is different. It's like, Morgan, you're probably very familiar with this since you train people all the time. Unique selling style is so important. You need to embrace that. And you know, as technology moves forward, it will be able to tend to the unique selling style. It will be able to tend to all of that and understand the people who are using it. So it's individual. It's an individualized experience for the best possible outcomes. And I'd like to know, Morgan, too, a little bit about how you came to that, because I would find that very interesting to see your perspective on that.
In terms of the agile selling piece or just the KPI piece?
Well, I guess it would be agile selling and then adapting to unique selling style to help push them through, where it may not work for you, even if you're training them, but it works for
Yeah.
them great. And how to push them up to use that to their power without having the same process as them.
So I think the best example is I don't know if you guys have all seen this in the chat. If you want to chime in, is The Last Dance by Michael Jordan. If you guys have been checking that out, it's been something that I have. I was born around the time that like all that was happening. So like now to see like the behind the scenes is pretty cool. So if you guys haven't checked out The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, it's great. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because Phil Jackson had a process of the triangle, but he was able to coach directly to the players to get the best out of them. So how to coach Dennis Rodman versus coaching Michael Jordan and Pippen and Kirk, those are all different players, right? And
Oh
so,
yeah, very different.
right? So you're not going to be able
Oh
to
yeah.
tell Rodman the same thing you could tell Jordan. You're not going to get the same out of them. And I think a lot of times what ends up happening is from a leadership perspective is if you were a top rep, if you are successful, you take what you did and you're like, everyone should do this. When
Yeah,
there are certain nuances of what certain people do that's differently. And so there's the difference is that if I come in and do a training, it's different than how I'd approach coaching. Training is more
Yep.
structured. Training is here's a process. Here's how you go about it. Coaching is a flow and a continuous development of you once I've given you the training. Right? So that's why there's
yeah,
trainers and there's coaches. It's two different concepts. So to
Yeah.
answer your question is, yeah, I'll go train people. Oh, here's the structure. Here's how you go about it. But then the coaching is from a leadership perspective, especially the frontline managers right now that are working remote. This is a critical skill to learn right now because you have to figure out, okay, what is your what I called it when I was an SDR manager, which was the nucleus, which is what is the thing that you're good at. I had reps that were incredible on the phone, but they couldn't write, right? I had reps that were amazing writers, but they weren't that great on the phone. I had some reps who were really good at video, but they weren't great on social. And I'm not saying you're not good at that, don't do it. We just figured, hey, if you're really good at this, let's amplify that. Just like Steph Curry, he's amplified his three-point shooting, but he can't really dunk, right? But he's still considered one of the top 5 basketball players in the NBA right now. And so it's really focused from a coaching perspective. I'm going to figure out what are you really good at, and I'm going to look at the data, right? And it'll tell me, okay, you're really good at converting on cold calls. We should do more cold call coaching with you so you can get better. And then we're going to fine tune the other skills you have, but you're really good at calling. That's the number one thing that we want you to do the more of than the other ones, which leads into multi-channel prospecting and leveraging data and insights and when to send emails, etc., which is all the great things that are behind the scenes. But to answer your question there, Rob, it really comes down to I know what the process is. Here's a formula, the science. The art comes down to how do you coach people to what they're comfortable in so they can fall into that process. You can't force.
sales is an art. I agree
You
100%. It is an art. It's like that with anything that, like, whether you're talking about anything that has any creative aspect or psychological aspect, I would consider as an art, because you can't have a machine replace a designer. There's no formula to design. It's based on an experience that they have. I come from a background of design, so it's not go. You can have auto-generated websites, you can have all that stuff, but a designer needs to tell it how to do that. But then it's also not a unique experience that will emotionally challenge that person or emotionally impact them in a way where they're going to get a reaction from it that's truly going to make them feel something. It's the same thing with sales. There's nothing out there that could replace that genuine emotional connection. It's the same thing with you can't have a machine be an artist either, because it can only create things that are out there or based on things that are out there. So there's nothing truly creative that it could produce. It's just reproducing versions of other things that are out there. So there's a huge connection between AI and people, where they can help one another with what they're best at. Just like you, that's why I'm going back to that. Is like you differentiated with coaching and training. You train machine learning or AI, and then it helps you coach it how to serve you best, and then it coaches you on how to use that information best. So it's like it's a really tight bond that can be created, and there's so much opportunity that can come from that.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to just point out one thing here, which is the kind of what you guys are alluding to, at least from my point of view, is it's called a computer for a reason, right? That that's what it does. It literally crunches numbers, right? So use it to crunch your numbers, because that's what it's really, really, really good at. And there are lots of ways that you can crunch numbers and all of that, but that repeatable process, that stuff that you don't want to do, that busy work of figuring out who and how you convert that all to numbers and crunch that as a number, you don't have to necessarily figure that out. That's what the sales enablement tools are doing these days. So you should get out there and adopt them in front of your competitors, because guess what? Everyone's going to do it. Use the computer
Yeah.
to your
At
advantage.
a time like now too, where the
Yeah.
roof is on fire, and it's also the basement's flooding at the same time, right? That's what's going on. And it's take advantage of the new stuff that's out there, rather than oh, we need to do exactly. A lot of companies that I've spoken to, they're like, we're doing this exact thing that we're doing, and this is the plan for the whole thing, and we will not look at anything else. It's like tunnel vision for the short term, when really you should be looking out. It's any time of a golden age, or a time of serious decline, or whatever have you. When it's at any extreme, there are always large opportunities out there for you. So seeing beyond that negative, and being able to enable yourself to find where the opportunities are, because you'll often find that there are opportunities there that you have never seen before, that are entirely new to your business, that could be the most profitable thing, whether it's instant, whether it's short term, whether it's midterm or long term, that will be available, that you can build to, where in the future it's going to benefit you in ways that you could never imagine, because of all this, all the crazy stuff that's happening at any given time, with any sort of extreme.
Mhm.
So it's just look beyond that. Don't let the negative get to you, and don't let the positive get to you too much either. Because if you're oh yeah, I'm on the high horse, we're doing everything perfect. Often companies are resistant to change, then they fall behind. There could be a competitor that comes up. They could start doing something, way more innovative, or right past you. You're left in the dust. Anything to innovate. When you're at that serious decline, it's keep innovating different pathway that could bring you the most value. I'll push you forward. That could increase your revenue. That could do whatever for. When it's that nice in between time, when everything is hunky, both directions, looking at both of those different ways, where it is in a golden age. If we're in decline, and we should start make sure that you're prepared for it.
Let's then Rob, we can go deeper on that, right? Because that's important what you talked about, which is being agile and not getting comfortable, right? Obviously the best example of that is Blockbusters or Netflix. I think there still is there's a Blockbuster out there, out in
Oh yeah.
Washington. You can still go to if you want to. Blockbuster was awesome, but the thing is that from a sales perspective, is when you get comfortable in what you're doing. We all have this, right? You're like, cool, this is it. This is my go-to. And you're 100% all in. I always just encourage people, think about 80-20, right? 80% of the things that you do, hey, I know this works. This is my process. And then 20% of things we're going to try out new that we don't know works, which gives you that space to go do whatever you need to go do, to go A/B test whatever you want to do, and whatever approach that you want to do differently, that won't affect the end result, which is in the 80%. So, in thinking about how to break this down from that standpoint, that's what I always encourage people to do, whether you're a leader or a rep or anybody really. That's a way to really break it down, to be like, okay, we have this new information. How do we leverage that? And I think that will be the biggest change moving forward is people have to be more agile, more open to trying new things because it is changing every single day, every week, every month based on what we're currently in. And if you stick to what worked before, that won't be the saver at the end of the day.
Yeah, that old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Unless you're talking about a chair that you're sitting on or like a piece of machinery that's fine tuned, it's not all that relevant. That is the most untrue statement ever. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Unless it's an inanimate object that you're currently using that has no issues, that is the only time that is relevant in any way. And that type of thought process actually drags companies behind too. I
Yeah.
mean, a good example is banks. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like 80% of banks are still running on a mainframe that is written in Domino, which is a dead computer language that like only 9 people know how to actually write in or read. So that's a serious problem, and they waited too long. And banks are like, they're on their way of trying to figure this. They're like, oh my god, what do we
You're
do?
in panic mode right now.
They've got on the return. There's little green screen sitting in a basement behind like a 3-foot steel reinforced wall with like this tiny computer thing that looks like it's one of those old ones from like the movie The Matrix. And that's
Right.
that's how they're doing stuff. And they need to get away from that.
Definitely.
You know how hard it is to move away from that because they built so much on it and said, we'll fix it
Yeah.
later.
Not too late. Yeah, it's about being it's about being agile. It's about being agile. I mean, there's so many things that change daily. That's why I always truly believe that the number one thing that HubSpot puts out every single year is prospecting is like always the biggest challenge for sales reps. And I think the biggest change will be, especially from the AE side, they'll be more asked to prospect more, and I believe it will be more of a mandatory for some organizations because they'll have to get more pipeline because of all of the layoffs that may have happened in other organizations. And I feel like if you aren't looking at how do I prospect in today's age, what are things to think about, it puts you behind because it goes back to what Tim was talking about when he was talking about that story of going out and hunting. You have to be that hunter right now in sales, especially right now where you have to spark conversations. You got to do it in a different way.
Yeah. And technology can help you do it that other way. I
Exactly.
like what you were saying with LinkedIn too. Well, actually, you're saying with LinkedIn, with writing skills, different salespeople and just different people in general have different skills, and outlining those skills to that's strong. But often, a lot of times, if you have a huge strength in something like email writing, that's like your biggest thing. You're great at writing emails. It's like a piece of art. It is so structured and beautiful and simplified, and you rarely ever have that communication error where they interpret it wrong. That's great. Um, that can overflow into a lot of other skills. It's just that how do you take that skill and translate it to something that's vocal, something that is more of an instant messaging type of area of things, like, for example, LinkedIn. How do you translate those skills that you're using? Because you're doing everything right there. It's all communication.
Mhm.
How can we find ways to make that communication effective in every aspect of your communication? Because you can always learn to do so.
I believe video. I've been so hype on this. I've been like saying it ever since the start. I was like, if you don't know how to deliver on video, it's going to be tough for you moving forward because we're moving in this virtual world where I believe a lot of people probably from a COO, CFO standpoint are going to be like, do I send everybody back to the office when we're still productive and it's costing less money? Like, these are things to really think about. And so now as we're on video, a lot of people moving forward, I honestly believe that we might not have a large scale event to like mid 2021 until something happens, right? Like where there is the real vaccine. And like these are things to really think about, right? So, and I think Facebook pushed all their events out to like into 2021, like because they think this is going to happen. So based on like the trends,
I would
we
agree
won't
with
have
them.
we're not going to have those face-to-face conversations. The closest thing you're going to get is a video. And so the video is more seen as a virtual handshake. And right now, I think it was like I was on a thing this morning and they said that 82% of people in 2022 are going to be interacting with video in some way every single day, like going to YouTube or etc. And so it's crazy that I saw that stat and someone was presenting it and I was on the panel. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But the thing is that we have to think about like how can we communicate via video when so many more people are going to be in this virtual world and we're not going to have those face-to-face events. The better you're at your video presence and again, like you talked about, telling a story, it's a lot easier to do that via a video than text when more people are getting more into watching videos, etc., because they're looking for that connection here. So it's
Right.
interesting to think about.
And video connection can be very powerful because I was told this story by I think I was on a sales call or a partnership call. I forget which. It was someone I was speaking to, and they told this story about how powerful video connection can be. So this ties right into what you're saying. It's off the category of sales, but she was telling me, she was saying, yeah, the level of power that video has is that, like, for example, older people are finally, I mean, like, much older people, like in the 70s, 80s, who would never even have a cell phone before, they now have that.
FaceTime.
They now have the ability, and they've been in this whole quarantine for so long, they haven't seen anyone because their family won't go to see them because they're so they're more elderly and they have higher risk, right? So they don't want to put them at risk. Got a cell phone, had a conversation on FaceTime. First time they have seen another human being basically in, like, I think 2 months.
Yep.
Time with granddaughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like the most incredible, amazing experience of that, what it was to watch them as they were standing outside on that call, because it was the first piece of family that they've seen in that long, and all it was as simple as just a video chat call. And if you're gonna
Yeah.
have that much of an emotional impact on somebody, there are so many ways that we could use it to connect with each other at a business level. If it's that level of impact, especially the people who are new to this whole thing, where they usually do, they drive around, they do sales everywhere, they drive around, they have meetings, and they all meet in person and everything. This is a whole another level that they can hop onto. That's it, in the end, it's going to benefit them, because all that travel, all that going everywhere, trying to talk to everybody all the time, you get so much
Yep.
less done. With video, you could be doing it the whole time. Let's say while you're traveling, you can have 2 meetings while you're traveling on video and then meet them in person.
Yeah, incredibly important, and like more so like how I see it, even more like on that higher level. If you're thinking about, man, I want to do video in my
Yeah.
organization, but like, how do I even go about this? Right? You take the data, figure out which personas are relevant to you, which industries are sparking conversions, and then if let's say if you're in a field sales rep, this is perfect for you right now. Is see the video as a trailer. So I've been studying movie trailers, and the most impactful movie trailers are around 90 to 120 seconds. So normally when you make a video, it's like less than 90 seconds. And so I think the difference that's going to be moving forward is, to your point, Rob, there will be more Zoom calls, there will be more FaceTimes that are meetings, there will be more people sending videos. But if you're a sales rep right now and you're thinking about prospecting and closing, we were talking about storytelling. The movie trailer is what gets you in, right? The prospecting email or the call or the voicemail what gets you in. So think about that as the movie
Great way to
trailer.
put it.
And then once that movie trailer has you enticed, then it's like, I want to go see the movie. And the movie tells the story. And what the story is us as sales reps. We are ultimately in the sales cycle, the movie. And based on how we tell that story is what's going to get you to obviously the cross sell upsells, which would be the Toy Story 2, the Toy Story 3, right? But if you can tell
Yeah.
a highly impactful story, it's going to get people to trust you. As brands tell great stories, they trust brands, right? And then now if I trust you, I feel like you can help me solve my problem, then obviously here's my money. And I think everyone should be thinking about that movie trailer, movie concept in terms of where we're going moving forward when it comes to video
Yeah.
and the sales cycles as a whole.
I agree with
Yeah,
all
we
that.
could all take a little bit of advice from Apple there. Like, if you look at them, they
Yeah.
have such a cult following of their brand, and it's all because of the storytelling and actually connecting to their users and their consumers in a way that is absolutely ridiculous. Like, people are emotionally attached to these devices. Like,
Yeah, I
even if
think you're
someone gets
missing a point here, though, Rob. I think you're missing a
oh, what's
big
that?
point, which is this. When you think about Zoom and these sorts of meetings and stuff like that,
Yep.
like, you talk about how grandma got to see her kids for the first time. I talked to my mom on Zoom for the first time ever, and my wife talked to her mom. That's actually what's going to drive this, right? It's that family connection video call when people didn't have any reason to do video calls until this happened. But now that it's happened, oh, well, isn't this a better format? Aren't there going to be more of this? The university where my wife works, she's a nurse, by the way, they were talking about how they had 20 telehealth calls per week, system wide, before COVID 19. They're at 4,500 a week now. And they know that going back, that people, they know people are more comfortable going to the video call with their doctor than they are going to the office. These things, this change, it's a subtle change, but it's here to stay. And people will connect more emotionally over that video. So that trailer piece is huge, but it's going to be driven by the interconnectedness of this technology. And that thing is like, it's going to drive it in ways that I don't think anybody really truly gets yet.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. Like I actually had an experience with that whole doctor's visit over video. It was the strangest thing in the world. It just felt all wrong.
Yeah.
And doctors actually have the ability. It's legal right now for them to, you can reach out to them through Facebook and you can have a medical conversation. It's nuts, but that's besides the point. But yeah, it was great because it was just to renew a prescription. They're like, oh, how's it working for you? Is it good? You know, like, are you doing just fine? Like, how's your blood pressure, whatever? Why do you have to go to the doctor's office, take off from work, drive over there, wait in the waiting room forever? And then, 3 hours have gone by, half your day is gone. You've missed all your opportunities to have these phone calls, these meetings, to push forward.
As people start to trust this technology,
But yeah,
it's a huge deal.
fine.
When people start trusting this technology as the way they connect, then capitalizing on that is what the salespeople have to do, right? Have to. So I think Jake's going to get after us here to be done, but I want to thank everybody for listening to the three of us.
Timer.
Exactly. I want to thank everybody for listening to the three of us kind of ramble about sales enablement technology and processing data, and the way that we connect it all to everything. And thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Morgan, it's a pleasure to have you come last minute like this. That was awesome, and it's been great having you too. Like you're great. I mean, the whole JB association is fantastic. We love you guys. And, we talk to so many of you all the time that it's great. So
no, we appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully everyone here got something insightful just to think about moving forward, as we're going to this new normal. I think we're all adjusting. No one has all the answers, right? But we're all trying to figure it out. So it's a great conversation.
Yeah, and
for sure.
If anybody's got follow-up questions, I think everybody's around at booth, so do that. You can always email us. Pretty sure everybody's contact information is around. We're happy to continue this conversation offline.
Yeah, and so take advantage of the forums. There's chat forums where you could just talk to people. It's like a chat room for text. You can direct message anybody. If you go into the attendees, if you don't know this already, you could direct message anyone. Everybody's contact information is there. The booths have all the company contact information. You can hop into that live. They're finally back up. I'm going to reiterate on that. They're up again. Huva apologized to us deeply for that one. So it's all good. It's all good. Everything's just running smoothly, but Murphy's Law with the whole thing, like I said in the beginning. But yeah, this is like a next step too. Like, this is the new way that we can have large scale meetups. You can actually talk to people, have that one-on-one conversation. Why not? There's always a way around everything, and there's always a new way to do something.
Yep. All right, guys. Thanks so much, and enjoy your lunch, and look forward to seeing you at their events today.
Awesome.
All right.